إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Amma ba'd. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and abundant praise, and we ask and beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings on our dear noble messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his righteous family, his righteous companions, and all those who follow his path until the day of judgment. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us for giving us the ability to be here on this amazing day of Jum'uah, to be with the community. Many people were given the will to come, but they were not given the ability, subhanallah. And others were given the ability, but they were not given the will. So Allah Azza wa Jalla blessed us with the will and the ability to be here on this blessed day of Jum'ah Mubarak. One of the distinct features that defines this life for all of us is the pursuit of wealth. This navigation of the issue of the rizq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that's always something that concerns us. This trying to figure out where we're going to get our wealth, our food, where we're going to live. All of these things are aspects of the dunya that tax us, overwhelm us, and they are causes that concern us and worry us. Allah Azza wa Jalla states in the Quran, in Surah Al-Kahf, المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير عملا. And Allah states, wealth and children are the adornment of this earthly life, but the everlasting good deeds are far better with your Lord in reward and in hope. So Allah is clearly saying that wealth is a difficulty, this is a trial, and this is a test. And Allah teaches us from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam how to make sense of this difficult feature of the dunya. How can we have a worldview that is informed by the Quran, where we feel a sense of confidence, that we have an understanding about wealth that is in line with how Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to think about wealth? That we are not always anxious about wealth, that we're not always worried and have sleepless nights because of this aspect of the dunya. We have to learn something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to develop a trust in the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal. And one of the things that we need to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a name that's mentioned in the 99 names, that's mentioned in the Quran itself. This name is Ar-Razzaq. So this name is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means He is the absolute provider, the absolute sustainer. That Allah Azza wa Jalla is always giving. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran states, Inna Allaha huwa ar-razzaqu dhul quwwatil mateen. Indeed, it is Allah who is the continual provider. So Allah is saying, I am the continual provider. I am ar-razzaq. And then He mentions another name of His, dhul quwwatil mateen. Allah Azza wa Jalla is al-mateen. He is the firm possessor of strength. So this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, He says, I am ar-Razzaq and I am the most powerful, the strongest. So meaning that His providing for us is in the strongest way possible. That when we look at all of the things that we received in our life, all of the blessings, all of the ni'mah, all of the things we cannot even count, these things come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we human beings are doubtful creatures, we're forgetful creatures. We forget this promise of Allah that He is going to provide for us. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows that we are forgetful because He created us this way. Allah Azza wa Jal gave one instruction to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam when He placed him in heaven. He said, you can enjoy anything in this place, live here as long as you wish, but avoid eating the fruit of that tree. And after a long time had passed, it is said that when Adam alayhi salam ate that fruit of the tree, he did not do it as a result of him deliberately disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He did it because genuinely he had forgotten that this was the instruction that Allah had given to him, even though this was the only instruction he had received. But Shaitan had deceived Adam alayhi salam by promising him certain things, such as you will live forever and you can worship Allah forever, right? Like he made him feel like what he was doing was actually going to be a good thing. Allah Azza wa Jal states in the Quran, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. In heaven is your sustenance and whatever you are promised. So Allah Azza wa Jal knows, like I mentioned, that even when He swears by something, we might not believe it as much as we would like to. So Allah Azza wa Jal, once again after this ayah, He says, فَوَرَبِّ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِنَّهُ لَحَقٌّ مِثْلَ مَا أَنَّكُمْ تَنْتِقُونَ. So Allah Azza wa Jal in the first ayah, He said, I have promised your sustenance. I have promised to take care of you, to provide for you. And then Allah Azza wa Jal once again says, then by the Lord of the heaven and earth, He swears by Himself. He says, what I have said, this is certainly true. Just as the fact that you can speak, so just as how we can speak, this is true. Allah Azza wa Jal says, how we have promised this wealth and sustenance for you, this is also true. So Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to have faith in Him, being the Ar-Razak, being the one who will continually provide for us. Rasulullah said, if you had relied on Allah and trusted in Him the way that He is deserving of trust, then He will give you the way that He gives to the bird. The bird goes out with an empty belly in the morning and comes back in the dusk with a full belly. So when we truly understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to take care of us, there will be no worry or fear in our mind, because we will understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to take care of us. Rasulullah once came to the masjid. This story happened in Medina, and he found one of his companions, Abu Umama radiallahu anhu, sitting in the masjid. So he said to him, "Ma bi araka jalisan fil masjidi fi waqti ghayri salat." Why do I find you sitting in the masjid at a time other than salah? So meaning this was not a normal time where people were just hanging out in the masjid. Something was bothering him. So Abu Umama said, Ya Rasulullah, humuman lazimatni wa daynun ya Rasulullah. Ya Rasulullah, I have these worries, I have these anxieties that concern me, and they won't let me go. And I have this debt, Ya Rasulullah. I feel like I'm drowning in it. So this was a man who was clearly going through financial difficulties, hardships in his life, and he had come to the masjid to seek refuge, to have some solace, to have some peace. And he runs into Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Umama radiallahu anhu, he said, shall I not teach you words? Open your heart. Shall I not teach you words that if you were to recite them, that Allah will remove your worries and Allah will take care of your debts? So Abu Umama said, Ya Rasulullah, of course, please teach me. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught Abu Umama this beautiful dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan, wa a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal, wa a'udhu bika min al-jubni wal-bukhl, wa a'udhu bika min ghalabat ad-dayni wa qahr al-rijal. This is a very beautiful, comprehensive dua that mentions a lot of different things, including this asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve us of this debt. So this dua, this beautiful dua, you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, I seek refuge in you from worry and sadness. Because you start with this thing, worry and sadness. Ya Allah, I am calling out to you, because I am powerless, I am helpless, I need your help, Ya Allah Azza wa Jal. So you're asking Allah, Ya Allah, remove from me these worries and sadnesses that plague me in my life. Ya Allah, and then you say, well, and then you're saying, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min hammi wal hazan wa a'udhu bika min al-ajzi al-kasal, that you're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to refuge from laziness, right? Laziness and cowardness, like a laziness and this inability to be able to do things, right? So like you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, give me the ability to be able to do the things that need to get done, and remove from me this laziness. And then you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal jubni wal bukhl. Ya Allah, I seek refuge in you from being fearful and being miserly. So these are another two things you're asking Allah, Ya Allah, I need your help. And when Rasulullah, my brothers and sisters, is teaching this dua to a companion, this was a dua that the Prophet used to make according to authentic tradition every morning and every evening. So Rasulullah himself is seeking refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal from these things, from miserliness, from laziness, from cowardice, from fear, from worries and anxieties. Rasulullah is asking Allah for help from these things. And then finally, in the last part of this dua, he says, غَلَبَةَ الدَّيْنِ وَقَهْرَ الرِّجَالِ, and the overpowering and overwhelming burden of debt. You're asking Allah Azza wa Jal, Ya Allah, I seek refuge in you from this overwhelming burden of debt. Because debt, when you have it, it's truly like a burden. It feels like a sword that's above your head. Even when you have money, you don't feel like you can enjoy it because you owe other people something, right? So this is something you're asking Allah Azza wa Jal. And the amazing thing is the dua ends with وَغَلَبَةَ الدَّيْنِ وَقَهْرَ الرِّجَالِ. So you're asking Allah, Ya Allah, I need your help from overwhelming debt, but also you're seeking the refuge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from other people from being able to overpower you. So Ya Allah, grant us refuge from this debt. For those of us who are suffering from debt in our community, may Allah Azza wa Jal alleviate us of that debt. And then for all those of us who are suffering under the tyranny and oppression of other men, may Allah Azza wa Jal alleviate that for us. So when we hear these words of Rasulullah, we have to treat these words as an essential part of our diet. Just as we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we have to see these words as this is something I absolutely have to say. This is like the oxygen that we breathe. You have to make it something that you will do every single day. If the Prophet ﷺ, who is the best of humanity, the best of all creation, is making this dua, we are in more need of this dua. So we have to make that a consistent part of our life. And we have to understand that, for some of us, we are going through difficulties and trials and hardships, and we might have already tried making duas. We might have already tried reading a lot of Quran and making salah, and we still feel like difficulties and challenges are there. And when that happens, we kind of feel a little bit distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We feel that, we put in our effort and it didn't happen, so why should I bother doing anything now? We have to understand that we have to have this faith and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Life is a test. If Allah Azza wa Jal tested us and immediately we make a dua and the test is gone, then where is the test, right? Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us for a prolonged period of time. Somebody who makes dua for a few days and nothing happens and this person gives up. This is like somebody who goes to the gym attempting to lift weights. And he goes for a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks and he's doing all these exercises and he doesn't see his muscles are growing and he feels like this is pointless, I should stop. No, you have to keep going. You have to be consistent. Alongside working out, you have to have a good, nutritious diet. You got to avoid junk food. You got to avoid being lazy. You got to do all of these things and then you see results. So why is it that when we immediately start on our path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things don't work out for us and we immediately give up? Allah Azza wa Jalla is testing to see if we are truly truthful in our claim of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So once we have made this dua, when we have made this, and I've taught this dua, you can learn this dua, you can read about it online. You can just type in a dua, hadith, overwhelming debt. Like I'm sure it's going to come up, right? But Allah Azza wa Jal is willing and He's ready to hear your dua in any language. And He's willing to even hear the silent dua that comes out of your heart. So it does not matter like the Arabic or the words. Of course, we say the Arabic because these are the words of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They carry a power, they carry a barakah with them. And we have to understand that this is the case, and then we make that dua. But we have to understand that Allah Azza wa Jal is always going to listen to us regardless of whatever language we're saying it. And when we make that dua, we have to be certain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us no matter what. You know, when there's a young kid and he asks his father for something, he has this complete faith that his dad will provide for him. But then when he asks for the mother for something, for food or some drink, he's not worried like, oh my God, is she really going to do it? Is he really going to do it? No, they leave it up to their parents and they just relax. They're not worried. You know, kids, they don't have the same worries as us. Oftentimes we think when we grow up, man, I wish I was a kid again because I didn't have any of these responsibilities. I could just, relax and enjoy my time. Other people were taking care of me. So we got to have the same tawakkul that these kids have when we approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having that faith that Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to for sure take care of us. And this was something that the prophets and their family members understood. Hajar alayhi salam was the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam. When they had their child Ismail, and Ismail alayhi salam was a young baby, Ibrahim alayhi salam was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take his wife and his newborn son out into the middle of nowhere in the desert and leave them there. And this was a command Ibrahim had received, and Ibrahim alayhi salam is always going to follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without question. Ibrahim takes his wife and their child with very few supplies and goes out into the desert. They come to a spot and there's nothing there. Now there is, because there's the Mecca, there's the Kaaba, all of these things. But at that time, it was a barren desert. Sand everywhere and some hills and some mountains, and that's it. And Ibrahim turns around and walks away. And Hajar calls out to him. He does not turn back. He's walking. Then Hajar says, has Allah commanded you to do this? He says, yes. And then Hajar is completely aware that if Allah commanded this, then Allah is going to take care of us. She does not need her husband. In this moment, of course, this is her husband, her caretaker, provider, but she knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate provider, the ultimate caretaker. So Ibrahim alayhi salam walks until he disappears from the horizon. And now Hajar, of course, she realizes that she has that trust in Allah, but she's got to do the work, right? She's got to do the work. She's got to find some help. So she begins running between Safa and Marwa, right? Like she goes up this hill and that hill, looking for help, looking for assistance. Maybe she can see an oasis or some water somewhere. And then what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills that the well of Zamzam would open at the feet of Ismail alayhi salam, her baby, right? And then other tribes came to that area and they sought her permission to settle there, right? So Allah Azza wa Jalla blessed her, and she had this faith and tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maryam alayhi salam, she was the mother of Isa ibn Maryam, the prophet who had no father. And Jesus, peace be upon him, right? Like when he was in the womb of his mother Maryam alayhi salam, Maryam was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shake the tree, right? So she was resting against a date palm tree, and Allah Azza wa Jalla wanted to provide some fruit for her, so that when she shook the tree, this fruit fell. Now, this is Maryam alayhi salam. She is in that process of potentially going through labor soon, right? And in that moment, like, she must have been really powerless and helpless. And if you go to a palm tree and you try to shake it with your hand, nothing's gonna happen, right? Like, nothing's gonna happen. No fruit's gonna fall off. You gotta like get up there and climb. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, even in that moment, when she was in this state of weakness and helplessness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted her to exert some effort. That she shook the tree and then the fruit fell and she was able to eat from that and sustain herself. Similarly, when Musa alayhi salam was fleeing Egypt with his people, the Bani Israel, and Pharaoh and his army were on the hot pursuit right behind them. And in front of them was the sea. The people were completely helpless. They said, we are going to get slaughtered. We're going to get massacred. There's nothing we can do. In that moment, Allah Azza wa Jal commands Musa alayhi salam to strike his staff on the water. And then when he does that, the sea splits and the sea parts, and the Bani Israel is able to go through. But did the staff have anything to do with the water splitting? The staff was simply a means of having somebody put in some effort, because Allah Azza wa Jal is ultimately the one who parted the sea. The staff doesn't need the staff. But Allah Azza wa Jal commanded Musa to strike it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to provide for us, but we have to do our part as well. The same way as Hajar was running between Safa and Marwa, Allah Azza wa Jal loved that action so much that we do it every single year to this day. People who go for Umrah, who go for Hajj, they make that same trip that Hajar made running between Safa and Marwa. And if you go today, it's much easier for us now, because that whole area is paved really nicely with some beautiful tiles. When Hajar was doing it, it was rock, it was rough, it was sand, it was hard, right? And we have it much easier, and when we go, we still get tired, right? So really when you do that, you have this appreciation for Hajar alayhi salam. So this is very important, right? Realizing that we have to put in our effort. Allah Azza wa Jal has promised to provide for us, but we gotta do our part. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, like to illustrate this, when he went to the masjid, when he was a Khalifa, he went to the masjid and he found a group of people there sitting and doing nothing, right? And he came back and said, these guys don't work, they don't do anything. So he asked them, what are you doing here? What's your business here? They said that we are the people who stay in the masjid, make dhikr, and we depend on Allah to provide for us. And he got angry at them. He said, this is not tawakkul. This is not relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a false reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah does not want you to just sit. Allah wants you to go out there, wants you to work. And for us to understand that the one who seeks the rizq of Allah, this person is engaged in worship. Like a lot of times we wish, we could be the ones who are reading Quran all day and studying knowledge and going out, and becoming scholars. But really, and we might think, man, bro, I'm just stuck doing this job or going to school, right? Like, we have to understand that the person who's engaged in seeking the rizq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a halal way, this person is engaged in worship. Because if you have this intention, if you have this niyyah, this sincerity, that, Ya Allah, I am going out to work today so that I can get halal wealth, so that I can provide for my family, so I can uphold my responsibilities, so I can pay zakat, so I can give sadaqah. When you have these intentions, then every minute you're spent, even when you're doing a job you don't necessarily love, right? Like Allah is going to reward you for that. SubhanAllah. Every Friday there is an hour where dua is accepted. Pray this is the hour and ask Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Going back to the very beginning, we mentioned that this is the nature of this world, right? Like, we become consumed with seeking and pursuing wealth. And we have got to take a step back and analyze and assess and reprioritize ourselves in what we do, right? We have to understand that, yes, the reality is that we have to work. We have to do our part. We have to do everything we can and rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what we have to cultivate within ourselves is that our heart is always with Allah Azza wa Jal, even when our limbs are doing the work, right? So, and when we're getting the money is in our hands and it's not in our hearts. A lot of people, they have this problem, right? like they get enamored by wealth. They get enamored by these pieces of paper, this currency, numbers on their bank account, that it goes and it just consumes them. Like that's all they think about, that's all they worried about, that's all they care about. And this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for. Allah Azza wa Jalla has made this world a means of working so that we may earn a living, right? But that's just so we can be able to uphold our responsibilities so that we can get to the real work, which is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spreading the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, teaching others about Islam. Like, where is the responsibility of Muslims in this country when most of us are just as consumed with wealth as everyone else? What are we inviting people towards because we are just like everyone else? You know, we have to understand that yes, we work, but we gotta have a different mindset. We gotta have a different perspective. We gotta have a different outlook. And you know, people in this day and age, they are drowning in these diseases of modernity, right? They're drowning in like all of this materialism and wealth, and they're seeking a way out. They're seeking a different like lifestyle. People are seeking it and finding it in the wrong things, right? They're not finding it in the truth sometimes. They're finding it in other Eastern philosophies, maybe. And we have the truth, we have that understanding, but unless we embody it ourselves, other people are not going to see like what we have as something any special, right? So we got to understand that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his rights, our body has our rights, and we have to understand that yes, when we're engaged in work, we should not do it at the expense of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I mean by this is that when we're doing a job, when we're working, we're not sacrificing our prayers for the work. We're not being the type of people that do a job and I can't really get my prayers done, so I'm gonna skip them and I'm gonna make them up at home. If you have a job that you cannot pray while you're on that job, you gotta find another job. It's not something like, of course, the reality is like it doesn't happen overnight. You yourself first gotta find ways like to be able to pray while you're in the job. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is really merciful. He's made the prayer window is really big, right? So you can try to find ways to accommodate the prayer in your schedule. You should not sacrifice salah for anything. No dollar is worth like no amount of money is worth for you to like skip even a single prayer. So you should never do that. And never think for a moment that your risk is going to be tied to haram behavior. So what I mean by this is that sometimes we are looking for a job and we get a job and then we find out that this job has a haram component to it. That it's a job that deals with interest, that deals with riba. It's a job that might deal with alcohol, selling, buying, or being on some end of it. It's a job that might be involved with harming other people, working in the weapons industries and developing missiles and drones and bullets and like all of these different things, right? Like and like things that are going to be used to like bomb and kill people, potentially even Muslims abroad. Like people, like this is the reality. Like when I was in college, I had friends who were Muslims who were engineers studying engineering. And then when they graduated, the first jobs that they received were from weapons manufacturing companies like Northrop Grumman, like Boeing's like weapons department, like other companies that Raytheon that develop like bombs and missiles, and this was the jobs that they were getting, right? And these were people who prayed, who were like really devout Muslims, but when they were receiving offers that were paying $150,000 to $200,000 for a college student who was eating ramen like for 4 years, that's a lot, So this is a test that these people like receive like right off the bat, So we gotta understand that it's better for us, for me, to like to stand outside. Like Allah Azza wa Jal is going to be infinitely more pleased. Like for me to reject an offer that's going to be tied with haram behavior, even if it pays a lot, than for me to just stand outside Home Depot and wait for somebody to come with a truck and I can go and earn some dollars like lifting some furniture. For me to mow a lawn, for me to be involved in labor, but this is honest labor, right? Like it's even if I get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars doing a haram job, and I think that I'm gonna give a lot of charity and I'm gonna go to Hajj and Umrah, it's not gonna solve any of that, right? And then you put your family in danger, like your kids are not responsible for the things you do, but you're doing a haram job and you're getting money and you're feeding your kids. That becomes really problematic, right? So it's better to have to live in a means that maybe are a little bit constricted, but to do it the right way, to do it the halal way. SubhanAllah. Ultimately, understanding this hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that he said, indeed Allah Ta'ala said, O son of Adam, devote yourself to my worship. I will fill your chest with riches and alleviate your poverty. And if you do not do so, I will cause you to become preoccupied and never alleviate your poverty. So we have to understand that Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to fill our chest with riches and contentment. And even if we have a little, we'll be happy with what we have. And there will be barakah in what we have. Barakah that other people, who are millionaires and billionaires, they don't have it. And they are not satisfied. They're not happy with their life. People who might seemingly, we see, they have everything you could think of: fame, popularity, riches, but then they go and kill themselves, right? It's like this contentment, this feeling, this barakah is just not simply there. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us have this mindset that, Ya Allah, you are Ar-Razaq. We put our firm trust and faith in you to provide for us, and we do not need anyone else. And Ya Allah, give us the ability to work and work hard so that we can provide for our families and uphold our responsibilities.
Ameen.
And we have to understand that one of the most important ways to cultivate this tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by giving to others, right? By giving to good causes, by giving to this masjid, by supporting Islah LA, Islah Academy, like the amazing programmings that happen here. It's very important, right? Some of us might think that, I am not able to give right now. I'll give when I have a lot. Like I'll give when I have more. If you do not cultivate the sense of giving when you have a little, it's not going to come inside you all of a sudden when you have more. So Allah Azza wa Jalla loves to see that when you have even a little, you're contributing to a good cause. Allah Azza wa Jalla loves that so much. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised that whatever you give, He will give back to you multifold. So if you're trying to develop that tawakkul in Allah, that trust in Allah, Ya Allah, I have faith in you, that you are the provider, then give and see the what's going to happen, the barakah that's going to come into your life when you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla for all the oppressed Muslims worldwide, Ya Allah, give them victory against the enemies of Islam. Ya Allah, for all of the scholars and callers to the way of Allah who are in prison, Ya Allah, grant them freedom and reunite them with their families. Ya Allah, for all of the sick in our community, Ya Allah, grant them shifa. Ya Allah, we make dua for our parents and elders. Ya Allah, grant them the best in this life and the akhirah, and forgive them for their shortcomings. Ya Allah, for all of our youth, guide them to the path of Islam and make them shining beacons of light, just like you made the Sahaba. Ya Allah, for all of us, Ya Allah, we are in desperate need of your guidance. Grant us barakah and in our iman, our health, and our wealth. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد عبدك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما عدد ما حات به الملك وحتى به كلمك وأحصاه كتابك. وارض اللهم عن ساداتنا أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وحسن وحسين وعن الصحابة أجمعين وعن التابعين وتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إقامة الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.